It was evening. I was standing at the bus stop at my girlfriend's house after another day spent together. We didn't have anything serious. I just enjoyed the delights of a young body, and she got to know herself with me. Despite the frivolity of my intentions, it so happened that that evening I met her mother, who worked in the police, and we had a very nice conversation with her. By the way, one day when I was sitting with friends from the area at a bus stop, chatting, joking, and laughing, this girl wrote that she knew I was at the bus stop, and I hope she was joking. I tensed up quite a bit, expecting to be followed. On the same day, I heard a story about how my girlfriend, whose name I no longer remember, was found at a friend's house by her mother, and the search was carried out through connections by some clever method. But during my further adventures, I didn't even think about this information, and if I had, then no further story would have happened. As I understand it, no one was following me, because there were no consequences. Anyway, it was already late enough. It was getting dark fast, the phone was dead, and I couldn't see where public transport was going through the website. 7-6 are you therefore, using the wisdom from the saying, language will bring you to Kiev. I immediately approached the girl who was standing at the bus stop and asked how long she had been waiting and whether the bus. She said that she had just left and she didn't have time for it, and it was an area from which there was no direct transport to me, and it seemed to be a day off, so I decided to spend money and take a taxi. I asked where she needed to go, found out that she was also in the Zavalsky district and relatively close to my house, apologized for the unusual request, justified myself by saying that my phone was dead and asked her to call a taxi, complaining about the late hour and the fact that transport rarely went there and offering to go together, and so that she doesn't have to pay for the trip. She agreed to come with me, but on the condition that she would pay for the trip in half and called a taxi. I asked where she was coming from at such a late hour, and she told me that she had been to her grandmother's apartment, cleaned up there, and was now heading home, and I briefly explained that I had been visiting and was also heading home. The taxi arrived quickly enough. Our communication was not interrupted during the trip. It was very interesting to talk to her. There were always topics that interested both of us, which was not the case with my girlfriend at the time. Due to some age difference, we did not have common interests and we communicated more tactily, and in general it was very comfortable being around a beautiful girl. She had a pleasant face, regular features, slightly plump lips, and a complete lack of makeup spoke of the naturalness of her beauty. And I also adore light eyes. She had just like that, gray, and big ones. Her brown hair was tied in a braid to her shoulder blades, and she wore a black leather jacket over a light-colored t-shirt and blue jeans. She was an ordinary Russian girl of Slavic appearance, but that's exactly what I love. The girls from the next door. She was a year older than me and was in her final year of university, the name of which I can no longer remember, but this fact about her is one of the few things that I remember. When we got to Cosmos, a shopping center that was not far from her house, and I was about 20 minutes away, we paid the taxi driver, and when I wanted to say goodbye, she asked what my plans were for the evening. Actually, when we got to space, it was already completely dark outside and the plans were more for the night than for the evening, which I probably said, knowing my love of tediousness. But I agreed, since Dad was on duty that day, and on such days I could coming home late. On other days, it was a rule to arrive before 22 or not at all. She suggested we go for a walk, and we went around the area. At first, we wanted to go to one convenience store for cigarettes, but it turned out to be closed and we decided to go to another one. It was a stall 12 to 15 blocks from the store. But the night was long and we went. I was interested in her life, told my awesome stories, we smoked someone's cigarettes, one of us had them left, and generally enjoyed the warm night. We reached the stall, bought what we needed, and the question arose. Where to go next? I could have gone in the opposite direction, but I didn't want to end the night so much that I suggested we go further and see what was below on Machino-Stroitly Avenue. At first, we wanted to go to one convenience store for cigarettes, but it turned out to be closed and we decided to go to another one. It was a stall 12 to 15 blocks from the store, but the night was long and we went. I was interested in her life, told my awesome stories, we smoked someone's cigarettes, one of us had them left, and generally enjoyed the warm night. We reached the stall, bought what we needed, and the question arose. Where to go next? I could have gone in the opposite direction, but I didn't want to end the night so much that I suggested we go further and see what was below on Machino-Stroitly Avenue. At that time, the residential area ended behind the stall, and there was something like an undergrowth with shrubs, after which the factory was located a few kilometers away. We decided to take a walk further and see what would happen there, which, of course, I was happy about. 10 minutes later, we reached some kind of reservoir, and in the light of the moon we could see steam rising from the surface of this excavation. A beautiful place. We walked along the shore, reached a small beach, where, apparently, people were swimming. We decided to take a walk further and see what would happen there, which, of course, I was happy about. 10 minutes later, we reached some kind of reservoir, and in the light of the moon we could see steam rising from the surface of this excavation. A beautiful place. We walked along the shore, reached a small beach. Apparently, people were swimming during the day, and one of us came up with the idea to swim. Marina, that was her name, of course, did not have a swimsuit with her, but she decided to swim in her underwear. I quickly took off my clothes, leaving me in just my underpants, and she slowly undressed, carefully putting her things on the grass. She was about 165 centimeters tall, slender, with long, beautiful legs, wide hips, and a relatively narrow waist. She was wearing a light thong for daily wear. I mean, they weren't lacy, but ordinary, cotton, not too petite, but perfectly accentuating her magnificent figure. Before going into the water, she decided to get rid of the bra, as there was some push-up, there would be nowhere to dry the bra, and we did not have a bag for wet underwear. I liked her small breasts. They were quite elastic and did not hang. Besides, the size perfectly suited her figure and stood out against the background of a flat tummy. Of course, I didn't bother her. We agreed to swim, not make love, so we slowly went into the water. It was warm in the air and low. We hugged and it was wonderful. If there was lust in my head, it gave way to emotional arousal. The excitement was not in the betting plan, but in the fact that it was incredibly pleasant to hug a very attractive girl whom I met just a couple of hours ago, and the one with whom it was so comfortable to communicate. It was a strong feeling of falling in love, and it stayed with me until the end of the meeting and for a while after. I stood, hugged her, and trembled. I was shivering from the cold and from excitement. Adrenaline was driving my blood and thoughts. It was the perfect option for a kiss, but he wasn't there. I don't remember why, but it didn't ruin our evening. We dressed separately. She took off her panties and wrung them out, but I didn't see it because I turned away. I took off my underwear and squeezed. Being in a half turn to her, she probably noticed my boner, but she didn't say anything. After looking around this beautiful pond and beach for the last time, we turned around and went in the opposite direction. On the way, we met a fisherman who was looking for a place to land for his quiet hunting, and I was secretly glad that he hadn't come earlier. We got to her house pretty quickly, or rather, I didn't notice how time flew by. We stood for another 20 minutes, saying goodbye. I gave her my contact and we agreed to meet for a similar walk again. Then I went, one might say, flew on wings, towards my house, thinking with a little sadness that all good things come to an end. Another month passed before our next meeting, and we rarely corresponded, mostly trying to arrange a meeting. Communication with the girl I mentioned at the beginning of the story came to naught. I met two more girls on the Badoo website. One was from Yaroslavl, and the other from Arkhangelsk. The one further away will be a participant in several more of my stories, because later on I fell in love, and on the other we just hung out with her for a while, but nothing much happened there. I found a common language with the heroine of the further stories. We talked on the phone for hours, and the love felt stronger. But Marina and I managed to arrange a meeting again, and I will finish the story with his description. We met at her house at a rather late hour and decided to go in the opposite direction from the previous route. We took a short walk, but in the end we quickly found a cozy clearing next to the railway, began to chat and drink a little. We brought beer and charged phones with us, so besides chatting, we were able to share our favorite music. We didn't have any special physical intimacy. We just kissed a little and hugged. She made it clear to me that at this stage she wasn't ready for intimacy, and I didn't really need it, because there are other pleasant things in life. That time was our last meeting. We sat by the tracks for several hours, and then went home. Music is a very important part of life. If you want to casually feel what I felt then listen to the 3 songs, the names of which I have added below. MGMT, Metanoia. It's been my favorite song for 9 years now. I asked her to include Marina in our first meeting. It's a very emotional, strong, and a little sad composition. High-quality light psychedelics. I recommend it to everyone, but not everyone will understand. The Arctic is on the horizon. This song was recommended, and included by Marina during our second meeting. At that time, I hadn't listened to music by Russian artists. It had been 4 or 5 years since I stopped being a rapper. This beautiful song reflected what I felt during my meetings with Marina: fire in my heart, inspiration, and some sadness. I listen to music, I don't perceive the lyrics. MGMT, Siberian Breaks. This song was part of my initial communication with my future girlfriend, the heroine of further stories. A little more psychedelic, lightness, and notes that penetrate to the depths of the soul. I shared this song with Marina during our second meeting. This is how I felt about a girl who was far away. This song still makes me sad. Not because it evokes any memories, but because the melody is built that way.